thought I'll do this evening is to talk to you briefly about the general view of how the environment affects our health, where we are as a state and as a people within this domain, and also to understand how it is that we can get back to a state of health and well-being by realizing that we are healthiest when we are in synchrony with nature. So, I'm going to forward this. Whenever that comes on. But the basic idea here is, and I would present to you this view about the environment and its impact on health. And if I get too preachy or too professorial, please forgive me because it's a difficult habit to break. If you look at the environment, you understand it as being of many different components. And these components are sort of nested within each other. There is the natural environment, the environment of the night and day cycles, the seasons, the sunlight and the altitude, the natural domain in which or the ecosystem in which we all live. And then there's a community environment of friends, our socioeconomic status, our neighborhoods, our sort of built environment, the cities and roads that we built and we live in. And then there's a personal environment that is populated by the choices that we make from the social and community environment that we are in. And each of these domains affect our health significantly. For example, the cycles of night and day, we are all entrained to this primordial cycle. It's not us, but all animals and all plants are. A large number of our genes are actually, in fact, regulated in a night and day fashion, in synchrony with day and night. We have greater susceptibility to disease in some times of the day than at other times of the day. And if we become dissynchronized with this natural rhythm, that we become sick and ill, and that causes an increase in heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. And this can be found not only in humans, but in animals as well. So there are times of the day we are more susceptible to injury, and other times we are not. So we are entrained to this natural rhythm, and if we divorce ourselves from this, then we have disease and poor outcomes. We're also quite entrained to the seasons. There are times of the year that we are more susceptible to diseases. There are times that we can actually regulate our risk factors better. And all around the world, there are more deaths in winter than in summer. And people believe that this might be due to changes in the seasons, and maybe because it's cold and people stay indoors. But even in places like Los Angeles, where there is no winter, there's still more deaths in winter. So we can see that that our health is inextricably aligned to nature. But one of the most important aspects of nature is sunlight, and we are also like plants. The plants are photosynthetic in the sense that they make glucose from sunlight and air, and we do the same. We synthesize vitamin D from sunlight, and we regulate a range of our metabolic processes depending upon where we are in the sunlight. So we are entrained and we are adapted to certain amount of sunlight and to each particular level of the latitude, and depends upon where we are, that we are whether in synchrony or not in synchrony with the natural environment we are in. We are like plants that thrive only in specific conducive environments. People who live in strange environments like high mountains have adapted to those mountains and live there where other people go there would find it difficult to live. People with old ancestry, for example, the Tibetans, have adapted to their environment where others have not. And one of the sort of paradoxes of modern civilization is that we have changed so rapidly that we have lost synchrony, or we are not in sync with nature, and we have not evolved to adapt to this and new environments that we have created around us. And that seems to be the major source of disease and dysfunction in modern societies. But more important than the natural environment to us and human is our cultural environment and the social networks we are in. And this is the example of the spread of obesity in social networks. And as you can see that there's clustering, that you can see the yellow parts clustering, which means that people who are more obese tend to stay with more obese people. People who are less obese or thin stay with thin people. And this segregates over time. And part of our habits of eating, of behaving in certain fashions, of making food choices, or making personal choices like smoking depend upon the social network we are in. So we are not individual free entities floating around which are totally self-determined, but part of this large social network from which we derive our identity and meaning. And in this network, we have created around ourselves a world that is becoming increasingly more polluted. We have managed to pollute every single aspect of the planet. In the recent analysis, there wasn't 1 square mile of pristine Earth left in the entire planet. Even if you go to the remote parts of Antarctica or the Arctic Circle, you will find traces of lead and cadmium and plastics. So we have managed to contaminate and pollute the whole planet, and we are paying a dear price for that. And if you look in the United States alone, you can see that the highest levels of air pollution, and this is shown here in the red, are in some of the areas where we live, and we bear the brunt of it. Louisville is a warm, loving, caring, compassionate, vibrant city, but we have one of the highest levels of air pollution in the world. We are number 10 most polluted city in the United States, and that's part because of a geography and because of a history. And that leads to greater death and disease. And as you can see here, areas which have high levels of pollution have higher levels of disease or have higher levels of diabetes and obesity. And then we have to work collectively to overcome this legacy and this burden of disease that is inordinately sort of given to us in the Ohio Valley. But overall, in the end, we are people who are determined by the sum of our choices, and if we make the right choices, things like heart disease, for example, cardiovascular disease or diabetes could be easily avoided. And these choices populate our being, and even though they may not show any external signs, wrong choices bring to us a sort of increasing burden of disease that could have devastating consequences over time, or at least in one catastrophic event such as a heart attack or a stroke. So I will end here with the idea that disease is not something that originates entirely in a person, and health is not something that we can entirely create for our own, but it is something that we get from the environment, and if we live in healthy, conducive environments, then we can live healthy and active lives. Thank you.
Good evening. So those of you who have been with us this week, you know that we've incorporated some interludes into our programs. And tonight we're joined by the Youth Performing Arts School here in Louisville. And they're going to join us for 2 songs. Their first song they're going to sing now, it's a poem by Wendell Berry. So if I could invite the students up to the stage.
Joy, 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 whatever is foreseen in joy must be lived out from day to day. Joy, joy, vision held open in the dark by our 10,000 days of work. Harvest will
We're just coming off of our strawberry high from the Strawberry Jam Festival, our 5th annual, which kicked off our 2016 growing season last night in the Shawnee neighborhood in a celebration of Kentucky-raised strawberries and West Louisville talent and community. So, and then I woke up this morning and I came here and I heard Rabbi Lawrence Kushner speak. He blew my mind. He talked a lot about our relationship to the divine, and the way he described it is very different than we normally describe our relationship, with a big circle being the divine and a little circle inside it, hollow, thus proving his point that we are inside the divine and the divine is inside of us. We are all divine and part of the divine. And I take this to mean that everyone, everywhere, all this around us is all divine, and therefore everyone in my adopted and beloved home of Louisville are all one. And therefore it's against my personal values and Jewish tradition and values that our policies, laws, and institutions in regards to fresh food access do not advance equality. And as far as what I understand from my very bright anthropologist friends, humans evolved to eat mostly plants, and we also need air and water. These are all basic needs. So shouldn't they be rights? Shouldn't access to fresh food be a basic human right? Well, I'm sorry to report that there's no law and no policies guaranteeing this, not on a federal, state, or local level. I've never heard any place in the country or any leader stand up and clearly state that this is a right and a clear path to a rightful conclusion. So, on the other hand, we are very blessed in Kentucky to have more farms per capita than any other state besides Iowa in the country, and a lot of rain. And this blessing, therefore, is a great opportunity to bring together farmers and people who are very much excited to organize together, regardless of facing their struggles with fresh food insecurity, and create fresh stop markets with new routes. And that's exactly what we've done. And we've worked as an umbrella organization for the 13 fresh stop markets that are about to pop up this growing season. And that's the biggest fruit of our labor, are the fresh stop markets. They pop up at churches, community centers, and now housing authorities in fresh food insecure neighborhoods. But it's very different than a conventional farmer's market. The food has been paid for in advance so that farmers don't face the same degree of risk they do with the standard farmer's market. And families pay in on a sliding scale, pooling their food stamps and cash in order to qualify for wholesale prices from local farmers, each receiving a share of 10 varieties of delicious Kentucky food biweekly. So Rabbi also spoke this morning about that flash that one gets when you know that this is all the divine. And I think I understand that when I see my 16-year-old daughter eat her Kentucky-raised spinach. I see her laughter, I hear her, I see her talents, but I also feel it at the fresh stop markets. And there's something very holy about local farm fresh food making its way from the hands of our farmers into a neighborhood and neighborhoods where high retail prices and limited individual family resources have prevented this from happening in the past and is happening now, all at the will of the community with very limited resources. And knowing that we have farmers that you're going to hear from tonight, like Bree from Rootbound Farms, that will build food justice into their business plan and sell food to families who otherwise couldn't afford to purchase fresh, local, organic food, that there are people traveling from all over the county now to come into a neighborhood they may never have been to before to pay the higher end of the sliding scale in a city that has been highly segregated for one, maybe two generations. And yes, all this is extremely divine. Thank you.
Born and raised. And for those of you who don't know, West Louisville is a predominantly African-American set of neighborhoods, about 9 neighborhoods, mostly low-income residents. And I love where I come from, but more often than not, we're given a bad rep. And a lot of people look at us, they see the low income, they see the lack of grocery stores, and they assume that we need saving. And I'm here today to talk more about the resiliency of my community, how communities coming together can result in us finding solutions for our own problems rather than being saved, and how when we work cooperatively, we can do anything as a collective. So New Roots has a history of telling food stories. So I'm going to begin this talk by telling a little bit about mine. So like I said, I'm from West Louisville. I grew up in what was once called a food desert. And it was normal for me to watch my family have to make a trip to the grocery store once a week, traveling 15 to 20 minutes. I thought this was normal. I thought that this was what everyone else did. And because we did have limited resources at the time, most of the food that my parents bought me was high calorie, high sodium, high in sugar, mostly processed. And I grew up thinking that this was the normal way that everyone ate. So on a Friday night, my treat was a bowl of ramen noodles, throw some hot sauce in there, sometimes some cheese, some seasoned salt, and we called that a meal. And what my family fed me out of necessity began to be what we ate out of habit. And I won't say I'm ashamed, but I only started eating fresh fruits and vegetables 4 years ago after being introduced to this work. So I didn't study food justice, I didn't study public health, I didn't study environmental justice in undergrad. So how did I end up being involved in this food justice world? Well, I came by way of Craigslist. I graduated from college, didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to help my community. I was highly involved in social justice organizations on campus, was the president of NABJ, National Association of Black Journalists, was editor-in-chief of a minority independent publication on campus, was involved in every march that ever happened on campus as well. But I really didn't get the food issue. And so when I interviewed for this position as a VISTA, in AmeriCorps VISTA with Presbyterian Hunger Program, the only food-related term that I knew at the time was food desert, so I used that to death in my interview. And surprisingly, they picked me. And during the last 3 months of my work with them, I fell in love with New Roots and the Fresh Stop markets. And I got to meet leaders in my community that are often not highlighted. More often than not, society seems to zero in on large corporations or organizations or government initiatives that are coming into our communities without consulting us, not talking to us about what we think the problems or solutions are, and assuming that they have all of the answers. But in my time with New Roots, I was mentored by the mover and shakers, the people that have been doing this work for the past 6 years and plus, and some of them are in this room right now. So the Miss Barbaras, the Miss Bonnies, the Miss Marys, the Nathaniels, these are the people who should be celebrated and commended on the work that they do on a daily basis. No amount of organizational good intentions are going to save us. We have to save us. And as a member of the African American community, I am aware of our long history of working as a collective to face adversity, and this is no different. By recovering memory and utilizing cooperative economics that Karyn didn't call out by name, but that's how the Fresh Stop markets work. It's utilizing cooperative economics, something that we have a history of doing. We didn't call it that, but that's what it was. Us coming together as a village to ensure that our neighbor, our niece, our nephew, all of our family had the necessary resources they needed to live a healthy, long, and beautiful life. And by recovering this memory, we are once again able to take a community that was once thought to be void of anything positive, void of beautiful, abundant food, and turn it into local food oasis, and a local food oasis. So by supporting these individuals and supporting these neighborhoods, looking to them for the answers and assuming that they are creative, resourceful, and whole, we can begin to address all of these issues that we talk about in a very theoretical way. Similar to what Bryant said, I found myself in spaces where people were talking about issues that I faced on a daily basis, that my family faced on a daily basis, and no one from that community ever really being represented. So if we can begin to move in the direction, we're looking to them for the answers and not coming in and assuming that they need saving, then I think that we will have a more just and sustainable food system. Thank you.
All right, thank you for having me here tonight. It's a great honor to join you all and these amazing community partners. So our farm, Rootbound Farm, is in Oldham County, and we raise organic vegetables and grass-fed lamb for our community-supported agriculture program for small-scale wholesale buyers, school lunch programs, farmers markets, restaurants, groceries, and of course, the program that is very near to our heart that we're here to talk about tonight, the Fresh Stops with New Roots. So Ben and I have been farming now for about 12 years. And for 9 of those years, we were working full-time day jobs and building our business on the evenings and the weekends. And in the last few years, we've had the tremendous joy to transition into full-time farming and taking the leap into building a vibrant family business. We have an 8-month-old daughter, and she's been strengthening our commitment as well to creating the world that we want for her to live in. So we met Karyn, Amber, and Miss Mary at New Roots about 3 years ago. And since that time, we've been growing our partnership and organic vegetables for Fresh Stop markets in Louisville and Lexington. Every year, we've increased our partnership and our commitment to each other, and it's that commitment to each other that I'd like to highlight. So farming is hard work. In addition to the physical and the environmental constraints, we have economic challenges. Our margins are thin, and one of our greatest challenges is finding a home for every item that we grow. So after months of planting, tending, nurturing the health of a crop, there's nothing quite as defeating as seeing a 500-foot row of broccoli laying unharvested, blowing in the wind because we don't have a buyer for that crop. So many of you may be familiar with the CSA approach, where families commit to a season up front and then share the bounty throughout the season with a weekly box of vegetables, a share from the farm. This model has had tremendous success because it mitigates risk by having those commitments up front. So in the past couple of years, we've been moving towards a commitment model with New Roots that is similar to that CSA model. During the winter and early spring, Fresh Stop leaders and the consumers decide on the items that they want to purchase through the Fresh Stop program. We meet with the New Roots leadership and talk about our capacity as a farm to meet those needs, and from there, we set a schedule for the year. We commit to planting, tending, harvesting, and nurturing the highest quality items that we have the capacity to produce. New Roots makes a commitment to us that they will purchase those items at an agreed upon price, and through this commitment to each other, we're able to minimize our waste, maximize our efficiency, and we all benefit. It's incredible. It's the model they've created. It's incredible. So New Roots has incredible buying power, and I want you to know about that power. By bringing together families and individuals all over the city, they have become a bulk buyer, or as we often hear the term, a wholesale buyer. Last year, Fresh Stops made up about 15% of our overall business revenue, and this year we're expanding to about 25% of our overall business revenue. That expansion means that we are moving away from some of the markets that had a higher risk for us and into a market that we feel like is more of a mutual sharing of risk. So as a reference point, 25% of our business revenue is the amount of sales that we did in local restaurants, groceries, and farmers markets combined. I share these numbers to show the impact of a program like New Roots on farmers. Yesterday, we were at the community event that Karyn showed the beautiful pictures from, the strawberry jam. And somebody asked me if we gave our extras from our farm to New Roots. And I told them no, we give our firsts to New Roots. Together, we've incorporated Fresh Stops and food justice into our business plan through our commitment to each other. When Ben and I began building our business, we knew that we wanted food justice to be a core part of our business model. We researched and experimented with incorporating reduced share prices into our CSA, accepting SNAP benefits at our farmers markets, and ensuring a decent wage and working standards for our employees. While all those are important and still parts of our business, New Roots has helped me understand that we can do more than we could have ever imagined when we have the right partners. So New Roots is made of leaders in their communities who live and work and eat there. These are not the same communities that Ben and I live in, but our partnership has opened these communities to us. We could not have created that alone, and I'm profoundly grateful to New Roots for welcoming us. Since this is the Festival of Faith, I'd like to reflect on the values that shape our business and our lives. And truly, our farm is an extension of ourselves. And the sentiment that I strive to hold in my heart in all that we do is that we belong to each other, that our personal well-being is tied up in the well-being of those around us. I like to think of our farm as a wheel with many spokes, and if any one spoke is broken or unsteady, then the whole wheel suffers. Some of the spokes, because I'm running short on time here, real quickly, that I'd like to highlight are health of the air, the water, and the soil, health and dignity for the animals that we raise and eat, spiritual and financial health for the family, for our family and our farm business, and respect for the well-being of our employees, and respect for the people who eat the food that we produce. Caring for the land and feeding people delicious, nutritious food that brings them health and joy is our deepest pleasure. And at Rootbound Farm, we are grateful to be able to work in partnership every day with New Roots and Fresh Stops. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bree. Well, as was mentioned earlier, I am the executive director at the Earth and Spirit Center, and we do a lot of meditation training. And one principle in meditation is learning to respond rather than to react. And what that means is instead of immediately jumping to something, take a pause, and then you can respond mindfully and well. So in the spirit of responding rather than reacting, before we jump into some conversation with our panelists and with our plenary here, if this is all right, we're going to go ahead and bring our youth performing arts singers back up for a second piece to let you all gather your thoughts so we can launch into conversation.
Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay. I'll speak loudly. Hi, Owsley. Now you can hear me. The first piece of the Youth Performing Arts School Chamber Choir sang was by a Utah composer named Andrew Maxfield, the words by Wendell Berry that you saw on the screen. And in the spirit of locally grown, this next piece is locally grown by me. My name is Daniel Gillum, and I'm the composer of the next piece that you'll hear.
Sure.
Thank you all so much. Beautiful. All right, well, as a moderator, one of my jobs is to facilitate conversation that keeps this evening's conversation connected to the broader conversation of the theme of this year's festival. And so I want to begin, first of all, by asking a few questions of our panelists, and then I'd like us to open this up so that we can have a broader community conversation. My first question for any and all panelists who'd like to jump in has to do with sacred wisdom, and particularly the role of spirituality and faith communities in creating a new food system. I know that Bryant mentioned his Buddhist practice and the idea of interconnection, and Karyn spoke to Rabbi Kushner's idea that we are all within the divine. But I'm wondering if anyone might want to lean into those topics a bit, given that we are at a conference celebrating sacred wisdom. Bryant, please.
Well, I just want to say that when I first started doing this work, I argued that schools and faith institutions could be two of the most powerful sites for transforming our food system. And schools and faith institutions gave me the most resistant and made it really hard to enroll them in getting on board. And, you know, I think about this adage that people often say, if you go into historically marginalized African-American communities, you see a liquor store on every corner. Well, I argue you probably see a church right across the street. And just think of the power that they could have in countering, you know, the symbolic damage that, you know, liquor stores do to our communities. And, you know, I just think about, and I have to say, you know, I talked really badly about faith institutions 10 years ago, but now, you know, Grace Cathedral, the Episcopal Church in San Francisco, actually invited me to be Grace Cathedral, yes, Grace Cathedral groupies. But Grace Cathedral invited me to be their artist in residence, and then we did I curated programming all around food. I'm working with some other faith institutions, but I think about some churches. Have you guys been to like some of these churches where they have this amazing industrial kitchen that's been just like dormant for 3 decades? You know what I mean? I mean, just think about the power of reigniting that, using it to teach classes, to incubate small, you know, food businesses. I mean, there's so much that could be done. The land, the capital, the people that many of these faith institutions have. And so I just argue that it's up to us. Like, we are the members of these faith institutions. No matter how much pushback the board of trustees or the reverend or whatever leaders might give us, it's our institution. And so we have to, you know, push our leaders, the people running the organization, to make changes that actually benefit the health of our communities. So.
I remember learning a few years ago at this very festival that, and I'll have my numbers wrong for sure, but that religious institutions collectively own, I think it's 7 to 10% of the land surface of the planet. So plenty of potential there. Any other? Please.
There is an old view from India, which is that the body is sacred and that we cannot pollute it with contamination. We also, and that's the underlying idea of yoga and meditation, is that we are part of the divine and that our mind and body are inseparable. And so then food becomes an important constituent of how we interact with the world and who we are and what we become. And certainly, so it's an important choice of the things that we put in the body. And so we need to be, just like we have to be clear about our thinking, and we have to make an attempt to keep our minds clean and pure and mindful. In the same sense, we have to do that with the body as well. And we cannot have a clean, clear, pure mind in a polluted body. So because if we consider them as one, we cannot expect the other, the mind, to be all clean and pure where the body is not healthy. So as a person, as an individual, and as a soul, we need to be careful of what we eat and how our habits of eating affect other people. And I think the the food is not just one particular thing that we eat, but comes as a social product. And so we have to be careful about what it costs to produce that, whether we are killing the forest or whether we are destroying natural resources or whether we are taking undue advantage of the labor of other people, underpaying them, undercutting them. All that is part of our food ethics that we need to be cognizant of if we are going to make a commitment to healthy eating and healthy living.
The second line of questioning I'd like to bring forward for our panelists has to do with the theme of nonviolence we've been working with all week. And what I'd like to hear, I think we've heard some references to this amidst these talks, but I'd like us to, if we might, speak directly to the question of how working for a just food system is something that made J. Edgar Hoover so scared about being such a radical act of nonviolence. And you could speak to either side of that coin. In what ways is our current food system violent? In what ways is this activist work also work of nonviolence?
Well, speaking about a Louisville context, I don't know how many of you have traveled down West Broadway recently, but you have to literally go past 18, I think the number? No, 27, I'm off by 10. 27 chain fast food restaurants before you get to the nearest grocery store. And that grocery store is subpar at best. That is a huge form of violence against my community. And so many people come into West Louisville and say, well, those people just need to be educated, right? As if we have so many choices. One, what grocery stores in my neighborhood? There are very few, there's 4. And over the course of, spread across 6 neighborhoods, there's 4 grocery stores. You go into those grocery stores, the food is molding, it's wilted. It's probably the leftovers from another grocery store in a more high-income neighborhood. And they think that because they know we have such few choices, that we're gonna just buy this food at the same price. And it's ridiculous. That is a form of violence, and it's affecting how we learn in school. It's affecting how we treat one another. And it's leading to all these different issues, obesity. I mean, people that live in my neighborhood, their life expectancy is 10 years less than their counterparts on the east side of the city.
That is really unfortunate, and there is a very, very strong element of food in that. And what you made is the right observation. We consider, we have been for a long time attributing bad behavior to individuals, saying you are not eating healthy and you're eating too much. But then as a social structure, we don't provide them with the opportunity to make the right choices. And the idea that I was trying to show with my figure was that we are part of the social network and we cannot be extricated from that. And so the only choices that we make are governed by the choices afforded to us by a social network. I mean, if I was Greek living in an agora, I couldn't be smoking. There were no cigarettes there, right? And if I'm living in a village, I don't have access to trans fat, so I couldn't have made my choices. But now we have come to put people in domains and categories and offer them specific choices to which they are limited and blame them for making the wrong choices. We call everybody, oh, you don't exercise, you're fat and you're lazy, but then we build cities where you cannot walk 2 blocks. So why this constant blame on the individual when the entire social structure needs to be altered towards a more health-conscious structure?
I'm going to put you on the spot, Bree, because you are really right on the ground with this effort. When you are doing your work over the course of a day, do you see that as activist nonviolent work, nonviolent resistance?
Absolutely. Something that your comments brought up for me is how we blame consumers for their activity. And something that we get a lot being in the organic farming business is folks push onto us that we are growing for a niche market, that organic isn't available across the board, that there are many people that can't tap into it, that's not going to feed the world. And in many ways, I feel like that discussion also dismisses the social structures that are in place that keep that keep our food from getting into the hands of the most people that are possible, most people possible. You know, organic very much right now is a niche market. And I think that it's very frustrating as a grower because we see that there's so much need, and we also see that farms around us that are growing organically are going under every year at astonishing rates. People that are growing food are not able to keep growing food in our current industrialized food system. So, you know, these contradictions that exist in our current food system are kind of, they can be maddening if we stay in our silos. So if we try to fix the issues of food inequity only in our food circles, then I think we will not get very far. But I think by connecting our food issues to broader social justice issues, health issues, housing issues, racism, segregation issues, then we can really start making the types of change that are going to get the amazing bounty that a state like Kentucky can produce into the vast majority of households in the state.
Amen.
But thank you for doing that. I mean, the violence is when our freedoms are constrained and we are not allowed to be what we want to be. And freedom is ultimately a matter of having choices. The free have more choices than the not free. And so even if people come and tell you that this is a niche market and why you're doing it, the fact that you're doing this, improving our choices, you make us more free and more and less violent.
Right. I'm reminded of Bryant's earlier point that everything is indeed interconnection. All the problems are interconnected and all the solutions are interconnected as well. I know that we're going to run a tad over. I hope that's all right because we started a little late. And the main reason for that is we want to give you a chance to lend your voice to this conversation. So we have some runners with microphones, and we will take several questions from the audience. Feel free to raise your hand, and a mic will come to you, I believe. Okay.
Hi, thank you all so much for speaking and doing the work you're doing. My question kind of takes from each one that you just asked, but the role of religious institutions and the problems that I'm seeing we're all facing about patents on seeds, and I know Vandana Shiva would have spoken all about that had she been here, but I feel like this is a really huge threat that's coming in that's diminishing the ability for us to get access to organic food, and then the focus on the capitalistic side of feeding everybody on Earth and having the environment not polluted and actually improving. But we've got a huge assault of chemicals and then increasing cancers and deforestation, and as you know, a vegan up there, thank you very much. This huge meat industry with all the chemicals and antibiotics, which is making globally just people more and more sick. So what's being talked about in the religious institutions? Because for me, and I'm not even religious at this point, but I really feel like all the things that come to us, the plants and fruit and vegetables, is completely God-given. And who gives the right to these corporations to usurp that right for the entire planet and put patents on this life and then own every seed and fruit that comes off of these things and every plant? So for me, I feel like there's a huge need for us to have this discussion amongst, you know, the faiths that are getting together and fight these corporate takeovers here of
yes, thank you. I
everyone's.
think there are two questions nested in there. One has to do with what are religious institutions doing, and then the other is what do we do about this false premise, which is only corporate industrial agriculture can feed the world. And breaking the rules as a moderator, I'd speak briefly to your first point, in that Pope Francis, as the head of the Roman Catholic Church, has moved the ball forward tremendously in terms of the conversation around environmental issues generally and food issues particularly in his new encyclical. It's now almost a year old, called Laudato Si. But I refer to the second half of the question in terms of can this alternate mode that we're talking about, can it really feed the world? Or are we just whistling Dixie?
Well, I just want to say, I think one important point that your question is getting at is that consumer action is simply not enough to shift our food system. And what I see happening, especially among economically privileged people, is that, people hear a moving talk, or they see, this illuminating documentary, or read this really, powerful book, and they're like, yes, I'm going to change. So I'm going to start shopping at the farmer's market, or I'm going to support my local farm. And that is important. I think we do need to understand the power we have as consumers, but it's simply not enough to reel in our runaway food system. And that's why I talk about like ending at the political, because there are structural issues that we need to address, from the patenting of seeds to labeling of GMOs, which the American public overwhelmingly is for, but we still can't do that, to actually having some say in what the food and farm, or the farm bill, which should be the food and farm bill, so people can connect with it more. And it goes back to my earlier point. I think faith institutions can play a tremendous role if they understand the agency and power as a body that they could play in shifting policies on the local level, on the state level, on the federal level. And I just think that, faith institutions need to see themselves, we're active, we're politically active. We are going to address shifting our food system by ensuring that our elected officials, the decision makers, aren't making decisions just for the handful of multinational food corporations that largely control our food system, but for everyday eaters and consumers like you and me. And I would love to see faith institutions step up in that way.
Chris? Someone has a brief question? We'll try and fit as many as we can.
Hi, thank you all for doing this, by the way. This is amazing. This is something that we don't get to see every day. And one of the things that I do see every day is I am in a family with myself, my two moms, and my two brothers. And we're all very busy. We all lead very difficult and crazy lives where our schedules are booked, and we've tried to eat healthy, and we've tried to eat on a less fast food schedule. But sometimes it's easier to go run up into McDonald's and grab some chicken nuggets and a Big Mac and call it a day. And I know that a couple of you mentioned that you were starting to eat more fruits and vegetables and starting to integrate that into your lives. And I'm guessing that busy lives is something that you have experienced or still experience. Is there anything that you have done in your lives in the past years that have helped you to shift away from the fast food life and into a more garden-friendly food lifestyle?
A lot of planning. A lot of planning, waking up early. When something becomes, at least for me, I can only speak for myself, but eating fresh fruits and vegetables on a daily basis has become a major priority in my life. And as busy as I am, 6 o'clock meetings going until 8 o'clock meetings the next morning, I make it a priority to incorporate time to cook within my life. So sometimes that's me waking up at 4:30 in the morning. I know that's not an option for everyone, but that's how I get through it. And I plan out what's gonna be for lunch, what's gonna be for dinner. I make a big pot of stew that I know that's gonna last me the whole week. Crock pot is my best friend. That can cook all day and be ready for me when I get home. So it just takes getting really creative, but I understand like the busy lifestyle. It's really hard and difficult.
I have to tell you that, having the Fresh Stop share really changed my life, because, you're bringing home 10 different varieties of just picked food, and you put it in the fridge, and I swear it like multiplies overnight or something. You keep, and you really, it's so beautiful. And that Bree and Ben have worked so hard that you're going to eat that food. And so, like Amber said, our whole lives during the growing season revolve around this food. And I think that's always been the case, right, Bryant? That, it's collard season, so we're making collards. It's tomato season, let's wake up and eat some for breakfast, lunch, and dinner before they're gone. Mm-hmm. So it's changed my life that way, because, I can't let that food go to waste. So you should join the Fresh Stop.
Shameless plugs allowed.
I just want to speak to that really quickly. And I think, as we've heard on the panel, businesses can play a tremendous role in creating healthy and just food systems. But I think capitalism convinces us that we need to solve problems on our own. And if we're having issues with eating fresh, seasonal food, then it's all about us. And I think that it's important for us to address these issues as a community. So you talked about making, a pot of stew at the beginning of the week, and I know after like 2 days, I don't want to eat the same stew. But what if every one of us got together and we pooled our money and we went and bought stuff at wholesale from your farm, and then we went to that abandoned, dingy kitchen at that church down the street, and we actually used that as a site to make meals in bulk that we can share among the group, things that we can freeze, things that we can have throughout the week. We're building community. We're getting to know each other. We're making it a lot easier. Some people might not have the resources. Everyone doesn't have a Vitamix or a Cuisinart, but if we pooled our resources, we could do it. So it's a way of us collective, and I think it's important to realize that for a lot of people, that's the only way we're gonna get over this hump, is by collective action and really depending on each other and using, sharing resources. And I feel like with the food piece, I get it. It's labor intensive to make fresh food. It could be time intensive. Sometimes it might be costly if you're talking about equipment, but if we do it in community, it can actually, in one fell swoop, address many of those issues. And I think we have to do that.
Well, to conclude, I want to latch on to something that Bree said in her talk, which is we belong to each other, all of us. And across all lines of culture and race and socioeconomic status and background, at the end of the day, we all are within this sacred circle of the divine, and we all have to eat. So with that in common, I think we have been given great food for thought this evening. And I, frankly, hope we have a little bit of indigestion. I hope that we need to sit with this a little bit and let it roil around in our minds and our tummies, and act from there in solidarity with each other. So I thank all of our panelists, and